Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Matt Chat, brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear. Nike is also the clothing sponsor for the Virginia Tech Hokies, and I'm really happy to be joined by Tony Robie, their head coach. Tony, good to see you, man.
David, how you doing, buddy? Thanks for having me on.
Well, you keep doing what you're doing, and we're going to have you on like every other month. Right. So I always like talking to you. You have such a really good 50,000-foot view on things that I want to get to. But I'd like to start with your guys' program. And kind of the first thing that struck me is, when you took over in 2017, it was very interesting. Iowa State has been on the rise with Coach Dresser. And Virginia Tech has stayed and even continued to level up with you at the helm. And so, kind of tell me, when you took the program over, I'm sure there was things that you liked how the program was run. I'm sure there's things you wanted to do your own way, wanted to put your own stamp on the situation. Kind of tell me how you attacked that and what were some things you tried to either keep the same or change.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of things that we were doing at the time that we probably still do. And, I think that I was pretty heavily involved in getting Virginia Tech from where it was when me and Kevin came in to where it was when Kevin left. So, we had worked closely together, and, we probably both taken some ideas from each other and implemented them. We made some changes. We do some things a little bit differently. It's certainly not exactly the same. And your guys are hearing from a different voice every day. So that part of it's a lot different. But I think the structure of it's pretty similar. I would say at least the philosophy is pretty similar. Me and Kevin had pretty similar philosophies on, work and what it takes to be good in wrestling, and just kind of being able to grind. That's definitely an attribute that I think that me and Kevin both shared.
You mentioned philosophy, and I think obviously some stuff's the same across the board, right? Like, you want athletes who want to live the right lifestyle. They can't just try to be athletes 4 or 5 months of the year. They got to be good citizens. They got to be good student athletes, good leaders, good examples. But you mentioned grinding. Is there, besides grinding, or even talking more about that, is there one or two things that you think you guys emphasize more than others? To me, on the outside looking in, it looks like you guys really emphasize lifting weights. Like, a lot of your guys are pretty yoked up.
When I say grinding, I mean more almost less from an athlete standpoint, but just more from, the coaching and the staff and the support staff, and, that kind of mentality in terms of, from the athlete standpoint. Obviously you have to do a lot of the work, but you've got to train smart, and, you got to treat guys individually. In my opinion, you can't train everybody exactly the same. They're all different level athletes. They all need different things. They're all coming from different places. They all have different, skill sets and abilities. And I think as a coach, you have to be able to manage that part of it. So, when I talk about that, it's more of, what our mindset was in terms of what we had to do as a staff and in the coaching realm and in running the program to get to a high level. So, as far as the program and what we do different, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't pay that much attention to other programs. There's a few that we try to, watch closely that have a lot of success maybe, but, really try to just live in our fishbowl and do what we do and stay focused on our guys and our team and our efforts and what's going on inside of our program, and make adjustments as needed and keep what's good and get rid of what's not and add things that we think might help us be successful.
Well, I don't know how many people that watch or listen to this know you very well. And I think from the outside, when I first saw you, I mean, you're built, shaved head, don't smile 24 hours a day. I don't think people actually know how genuinely good person you are. And I wanted to say this because I don't think I've said it. I get to do the interviews at the NCAAs, and I interviewed Andonian after his last match, and he was in tears. And, so we're asking him, like, why are you so emotional, right? And he talked about his journey, and he didn't get specific, but he talked about how he wasn't sure if he'd wanted to do it the whole year and how the coaching staff worked with him as a person first. And he said that he made it very clear, like, I didn't feel like I was just an athlete or a wrestler. I felt like they cared about me as a human being, and I went through some hard times, and I did this as much for them as for myself. And I'm kind of a wear my heart on my sleeve kind of guy, but that I was in the feels when I heard that because I coached a long time. I think that's how I know that's how you and I originally met. It was at junior duels and stuff like that. How much does it mean to you when a kid actually truly feels like you guys care about him as a person and is comfortable enough to literally share that with the country?
I think that obviously that means a lot. And I think everything starts with your relationship with your athletes, and they have to know that you have their best interest at the forefront, and you're going to make decisions based on obviously what's best for the team, but you have to consider, each individual. And, to me, I want to try to maximize every single guy on our team and get them to, be the best they can be, obviously on the wrestling mat. But, I think a big part of this job, and the older I get, the more I enjoy that side of it with helping kids develop, not just in wrestling, but in all areas of their life. And some guys have, more struggles, I guess, off the mat than other guys, with whatever it might be. Some of it's serious stuff, some of it's not. And it's just a matter of trying to help these guys navigate life. And, as I've gotten older, probably trying to become a little bit more of a father figure for some guys and really try to communicate with them and coach them and help them with everything. And I think when, somebody like Bryce in particular, he's got so much God-given ability. The wrestling part's kind of, dare I say, easy, but it's easy for him to a certain degree. So you have to, for us, it's like helping him where he needs help, whether it's academics, whether it's, whatever it is, and making sure we're supporting him. And I think when you do that and you take that approach, and the kids know that, that you have that philosophy, I also think they're willing to wrestle really hard and compete really hard, not just for themselves, but for their teammates and for their coaches that they have those kind of relationships with. And it's not just me. I mean, we have Coach Freyer and Coach Brewer and Jared Hott, and everybody on our staff is phenomenal. And those guys, they're more in the trenches with our guys. And I think wrestling is unique in the sense that, when you're in practice and you're, rolling around with guys and wrestling with guys and hand fighting with guys, and you're in the war, so to speak, with them, it's unique. There's no other sport that's like that, that I'm aware of. And I think that part of it helps you develop some really, close bonds and relationships with your athletes that really last for a lifetime, in my opinion. So, it's pretty cool.
Well, you were a great wrestler and a great athlete, and I'm sure you still remember the times when, like, a coach would get on the air dying next to you, when a coach would sit in the sauna with you, when a coach would, maybe help tutor you or walk you over, just do the extra stuff like you're saying. And you're right about the hand fighting and all the other stuff. Like, there's guys I wrestled with for years, and we're still friends because it's a unique situation. Like, if you bleed together, if you sweat together, if you get hurt, maybe not injured, but hurt together, it's a different situation. The other thing that kind of popped up as you were talking was, it seems like the really good coaching staffs also help these kids with stress management. Like you said about, specifically about Bryce, like he's a talented young guy. Some situations in wrestling come easier to him than others, but the importance of stress management and peaking in other ways beside, like, knowing, like, hey, like, I talked to so many kids' dads they're like, we wrestled this. And I'm like, when did you wrestle? Like, it's Tulsa Nationals. It's for 10-year-olds. There's no we. It's him. And if you keep saying we, he's going to think if you guys if he loses that you don't love him as much. And, to me, I see the good coaches, they stress effort. If you try, even if you do something dumb, but you tried, like, they'll pat you on the butt and go in the back and fix it with you versus, making it personal in the wrong way.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I see both sides of that. I mean, I have 2 of my 3 sons, wrestled. I have one that's just graduated high school last year and one that's a freshman in high school. And, so I'm kind of on that scene a little bit and see, how crazy parents can be and how involved they can be in their kids wrestling. And, at some point, they're going to have to want to do it on their own, right? At some point, they're going to be able to make the decision whether they're going to wrestle or not. And, at that point, they're not going to listen to you. And you better hope they still like wrestling and they want to wrestle and they really love wrestling at that point, because it's, it can go the other way, and it goes the other way a lot. It doesn't always go the other way where kids kind of lose interest. But, I think that, you kind of hit it head on right there. And it's, that part of it's important, man. You got to help, there is a lot of stress and there's a lot to these kids, and, things have changed a lot with social media and the pressure that exists because of social media for some kids. And, you can try to tell them to ignore it and to not let it affect them and everybody's opinion. But at the end of the day, that's easier said than done. And I think that's a big part of it, and getting these kids to understand that, at the end of the day, it is just a wrestling match. We obviously want to win real bad, and we put a lot into it. And the more you put into it, the more you want to win. But it's not life or death. There's more to it, and I think having that approach, I think, helps kids deal with stress and deal with pressure and deal with the bigness of what they may perceive wrestling is. And I know as an athlete, that was something that I probably struggled with early on in my career, through high school for sure, and through maybe my first year or 2 of college, until I figured that part of it out. And once I figured that part of it out, it just seemed easier for me, because there was the only pressure that really exists is to prepare to the best of your ability and to go out there and compete to the best of your ability. And, you kind of have to frame it that way.
Yeah, it's really well said, because I thought about where my mindset was when I wrestled, and I'm not sure I figured it out till I was done, and I think I probably would have been better if I'd figured it out sooner, that sometimes you can't control the outcome. The other guy worked hard too. Sometimes you get a bad call, all these
sometimes the guy's better than you. That happens too sometimes. So.
For sure. So one of the things, besides just how you look at the world, because I want to get your opinions on some things, but a couple of the things that really made me want to have you on was the duel against Cornell. And I want to name the venue correctly. And then the NC State duel, like how many people are coming out to your duels and coming out, because I think a lot of people feel like, hey, duels are the way to grow the sport. They're the way to get the common fans, they get, John and Susie student, just student to come. And then eventually they love wrestling and maybe become sponsors or, or donors or stuff like that, which is ultimately the way to grow the program. We can talk about either one of those or both of those collectively. I guess my question is, because we have a lot of high school coaches that watch this podcast, what are some of the things you're doing that are working to grow the fan base? Because it's big. What you guys are doing is big and it's significant. And I follow you guys on social, and they're doing a hell of a job getting that word out there as well.
Yeah, I think to a certain degree, we've been building this for a long time too, and it takes time for sure, and you have to win. And when you win, it helps. I also, we try to talking about Bryce Andoni, and we try to recruit kids, and we try to emphasize a style of wrestling that's exciting too. And we want guys to go out and try to score points and attack. And I do think that helps with your development of fans. And, and I think, I don't want to sound like I'm complaining, but I do feel like that there needs to be more action in our sport. Like there needs to be more attacking. There needs to be, however we can do that, whether it's, making takedowns worth 3 points or, making, and, we want to incentivize scoring points and action and taking risk. And nobody really wants to go out there and see two guys stare at each other. Or, one guy tight waist ankle a guy for 2 minutes straight. You're not going to build wrestling with that kind of style of wrestling, in my opinion. So I think that's maybe one thing. I would like to see stalling get called more in our sport. I know there's a lot of debate on that, but I just think that we're allowing guys to do nothing in a lot of cases and either be in matches and win matches. And, and listen, that happens for us sometimes. We're on we're on the positive end of that sometimes too. But, and you got to coach to the rules and you got to try to get your guys' hand raised. But I think in general, people want to see action. They want to see points. They want to see that kind of wrestling. So we try to promote that, and we try to recruit kids that can attack and can shoot and can score points. Guys like Bryce and Caleb Henson and Sam Latona. And I think that helps a little bit. And, just you really have to be engaged with your fan base. We're fortunate. We have a great social media team and marketing team that loves wrestling. And I think as a coach, you have to, develop relationships with those people too. And you have to get them to buy into your program. And I think, it's almost like with the athletes, when you have relationships with those staff members and those people that are in those positions, they're willing to work a little harder for you too. And you get them to buy into wrestling and get them to, love the sport of wrestling. They're going to work harder for you. So we've been fortunate to be able to do that. And like I said, I've been at Virginia Tech. It's my 17th year. So I've had time on my side. We've had continuity, and that helps a lot. And this communication with the fan base, constantly communicating with the fan base, being visible within the community, is huge, especially in a place like Blacksburg. That's a college town. And, the people want to interact with you. They want to interact with your athletes. They want to feel like they're a part of your program. Right. So however you can do that, whether it's through communication, through email, through social media, doing Zoom calls. We did a Zoom call at the beginning of the season. We had 150 people on it, something like that, just to tune in to hear about, the season preview. And all of those little things I think are huge for us and have helped us get to where we're at with our fan base.
Yeah, you covered a lot there. The one thing I will say firmly tongue in cheek is you have two of the lowest scoring assistant coaches in the history of wrestling in Frayer and Brewer. So just if people don't know those guys.
Yeah. They put up some points.
They'd rather probably lose 14-13 than try to win 3-2.
Yeah, it's funny. We were talking about just pins today. And I asked Frayer how he had 21 pins his junior year of college. I mean, that's insane.
It is insane.
That's And Cody obviously was a guy that was, I think he scored 5 takedowns in the NCAA finals. 5.
Yes.
I mean, that's not very common. You don't see that a lot nowadays. So yeah, you're right. And that's good. Getting back, one thing I don't think I talked about was, you'd mentioned the importance of duels and growing the sport with duels. Yeah. And, I do think that's, there's a lot of people kind of talking like we have to have a dual meet championship for dual meets to be important. I don't know, maybe I'm getting the message wrong, but I do think dual meets are huge right now. Like, I think our sport's in a great place. I really do. And I think dual meets, everything can't be like super important throughout the course of the year. We can't, the Southeast Open, our first event, isn't going to be as important as our ACC dual meets or those. But once you get in, you look at these conference dual meets, and they're important. I mean, I watched Michigan State, part of that, or saw they had a ton of people there. We had a ton of people, this weekend. Wisconsin, Iowa had a ton of people. Obviously, Penn State, Iowa are always getting a ton of people. But, I think dual meets are great. I think they're important. I think people love them, and I think that they're helping grow wrestling right now. And, I think the TV exposure that we're getting between the Big Ten network and the ACC network is huge, right? I mean, the ACC network has certainly helped us grow our fan base here at Virginia Tech, and I'm sure at all the ACC schools. So, I think wrestling's in a great place. Nationally, I think people are really into it, and fan bases are rabid for it. And, I don't necessarily, I think it'd be great to have a dual meet championship. If it didn't affect the NCAA tournament right now, I don't think we want to mess with that a whole lot, because I think that thing's awesome. And it's great. And, whether it's teams competing to win between first and second, or, fourth and fifth to get a trophy, or in the top 10 or whatever it is, there's a lot of storylines and a lot of interest in a lot of, things that I think fans really can grab a hold of and be excited about during that event. So I wouldn't want to change the NCAA tournament. I'll say that much.
I don't think the NCAA will change that tournament, because it's one of the few national championships in any of their sports that are actually profitable. Yeah. And it's very interesting, because Lee Pritz was in your seat last week, and he said the same exact thing about the health of the sport. Dual meets are great. We don't need to change anything. And it's very interesting talking to guys that I respect that are inside the sport. Like, I always tell people the hardest thing to do in wrestling is win wrestling matches. The second hardest thing to do is coach guys or girls to win wrestling matches, and everything else is a distant third. Like, I'd like to think I'm pretty good at what I do. What I'm doing is third, fourth, and fifth stuff versus those first two. It's interesting. People on the outside would like dual meets, and I'm one of my. I think a dual meet national championship would be cool. I think if they could somehow figure out a way to do it like 2 weeks after NCAAs, use the top 16 teams. The economics of it are important. I don't think people understand, like, if you take the duel that draws the, well, take your duel, NC State and you guys. If both sides, you and Pat both know we can get, I'll pick a low number, 3,000 people to come to your meet. And between the concessions and everything else, that's, I don't know, $50,000, $100,000 to your program. You don't want to wrestle that for free somewhere else. Now, if it's after the season and you're being paid to be there, and, whether that's school money or NIL money, then it's different. But
I think TV is maybe where some money, that could be where we could make some money at. I don't know that the gate and the concessions is going to be any kind of game-changing money, in my opinion. I'm not saying it wouldn't be good, but here's the problem, though, is like our season is already too long. Okay. In my opinion. And I think
you go one semester?
Most coaches, I would just like to see it shortened, whether it's one semester or whether we just knock a month off of it at the beginning or the end of it, or 3 weeks at least. I just don't know where you fit it in, David. Like that's my thing. If somebody can come up with a model where, hey, you can fit it in, but now we're talking at what, another 3 or 4 weeks of the another 3 weeks of the season, at least two, something like that. I don't know that after the NCAA tournament is the ideal time to do it. I just think that, it's going to be hard to keep everybody engaged, in my opinion. I mean, I think we have to find a way to shorten the season, not extend the season. And those are, I guess, just concerns that I have when I'm thinking about it, right? And so, that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Maybe it's like the Daytona 500, like you do it at the beginning of the year and the schools get a big payday. Like you said, it's on TV, maybe it's, and then the duels, and, like then the NC State, VTech duel, the Iowa Penn State duels, like potential rematches, and people get even more hype for them.
Yeah. And maybe then you have the conference matches, and it's just, there's a lot to go through. And, and we're in the ACC. It's not as difficult because we're not in the Big Ten. I mean, the Big Ten already has 10 home, 10 conference dual meets or something.
I know
They
they
have a lot.
have. It's at least 7. You wrestle the 6 teams in your division, and you have to cross over. It's a random crossover, so, but yeah, it's 7 or 8 at least. So
Right.
it's an interesting point. Like, while we're talking about kind of 50,000-foot wrestling stuff, what are your thoughts on NIL? Let's start there. What are your thoughts on NIL?
I think if it's applied and it's used to the way it's intended, it's great. I think that athletes certainly deserve to be able to make money, right? Elite level guys deserve to be able to make money, and obviously there's a market for it, right? I mean, these kids are starting to make some money, so good for them. And I think that part of it's good. I do think there's some parts of it though that are you know recruiting off rosters and things like that seemingly are going on, at least in other sports. That part of it I have a hard time with.
Well, I talked to a coach at the NCAAs on Saturday morning that told me that 2 of his All-Americans were being actively prospected while they were at the tournament by other schools. So it clearly happens. Like if you go to other sports, there's a guy who just decommitted from Florida because a $13 million NIL deal didn't come through. And, like Mark Ostrander does the other pod with me is like, this is all new. And I'm like, I don't think it's new. I just think it's been going on for a long time and it's finally just out in the open and they made it legal. I mean, I think people have been getting paid, at least some level under the table the whole time.
Now, I don't know that in wrestling that's been going on. I would be surprised, but I mean, certainly not in the programs I've been involved with. So
sure. No. Yeah. But I think in like football and basketball, it's been going on a gazillion years, it's because they're the ones generating TV money. So it
right.
economically matters. So here's another thing, and it's tied to duels. Okay. Like forfeits, defaults, guys, and it's, not everybody wrestling every duel. You guys, like everybody else, have had that happen a time or two, both when you couldn't wrestle everybody you wanted to, and you didn't wrestle anybody else's best guy every time. So shortening the season obviously would solve one of it. You said something that I probably say once a week, that people coach to the rules. And I could not agree with that sentence anymore if I put it in capital letters and was the title of my podcast. If you were the czar of wrestling, how do we make it so that in some of these duels, we get all the guys we want to have wrestle each other? Do we change the number of matches to get a seed, RPI stuff? Do we raise that? Do we shorten the season? I mean, how do we do that?
Gosh, man, like I don't know. I don't know that there's an answer to it. Like, I mean, if somebody's hurt, and it's not in their best interest to wrestle. I mean, you don't want to put guys out there that are hurt. I mean, Bryce Andoni hasn't wrestled the whole year. I mean, certainly there's dual meets that we would have loved to have had him. But it's that part of it's tricky. I mean, I don't know. I don't know that you can fix that, if you want to call it a problem, that problem. I mean, it's just like I mentioned, I think, the in-conference duels are important. And when it really matters the most, I'm going to put my guys out there. And if they're not hurt, they're going to wrestle. But if they're, we're certainly not holding guys out to protect them. But, if they're hurt and it's in their best interest not to wrestle, to help them heal and get better and compete the next week or at the end of the year, you have to do that. You have to do what's in the best interest of the athletes. So I don't know what the answer is for that, to be honest with you. It's out of conference. Just certain times of the year are more important than the other. And it's, the way it is. And, it's easy for people that aren't involved in the sport to sit back and, criticize everything. But at the end of the day, they're not the ones stepping out there. Right. And, so it is what it is. And to me, like I said before, I think our sport's in a great place. I think it's really healthy. I think that, dual meets are awesome and they do matter. And I think this past weekend was indicative of that.
Yeah. And the other thing that I always tell people is, and you've obviously done this, I did this for a long time, until you sat at and I'll say a guy's, because, when I was coaching, there wasn't girls wrestling. You sit at a guy's kitchen table with their mom or dad or grandma and grandpa and say, I'm going to treat this kid as if they were my own. No, until you've had those conversations. And now, like, you have to decide, and I'll just pick a guy because you said his name earlier, like whether we're going to wrestle Sam Latona tonight or not. And you made a promise to Mr. or Mrs. Latona. There's obviously also you want to do what's best for Sam, do best for the program, everything else. But I think one of the things that fans forget is, like, these are kids. They're young men, or young women, but they're still not fully formed adults in a lot of ways. Like, people are like, well, how could, David lose to this guy and then beat this guy? And like, well, he's inconsistent. Well, why? Well, he's 21 years old or he's 18 years old. Like, I know 50-year-olds that are incredibly inconsistent with what they do every day. So
look at every other sport. It's the same. I mean, it's no different. You watch college football, it's the same. There's a lot that goes into it, right? I mean, there's style matchups. There's a lot of things. Kids get sick. Kids don't feel great. They get, banged up. Some guys just wrestle really good. Emotionally, maybe they're not ready to go every weekend for whatever reason. So as a coach, you have to manage that, and you have to really try to make sure that, again, and whether we want to accept it or not, certain times of the year are going to be more important than other times of the year. And, we could go undefeated and be ranked number 1 in the country. If we do terrible at the ACCs and the NCAAs, there's going to be a lot of people not happy with Virginia Tech wrestling. So that's just the way it is.
And you could go 6-5 and take 4th at the ACCs and win the nationals, and nobody will care the other way.
Right.
So, yeah, I think therein lies the solution. Like, if people want to change it, you have to figure out a way to make those things equally important. Like you said, there's some like the Southeast Open isn't as important as the ACCs. It's important to get like data points and get guys matches, but you like almost maybe like what they do with golf, like where you score points and there's majors and stuff like that. I think that'd be interesting. So
complicated, I think basketball is the same. I mean, look at the NBA. I mean, there's guys that don't, that's a long season. Our season's really long, so I do think if you shortened it, that might be something that might help with if you limit, if there's fewer opportunities, you want to get your guys out there and you got to get them ready. And, part of getting ready is competing, right? But when you start competing at the beginning of November and it goes to the end of March, and, that's a long time.
Yeah. And you and I worked on a tournament and we couldn't ultimately get it done, but there's these, like people are like, well, this doesn't fit our training cycle and things like that. And there's all, those sort of things too, that everybody's on different training cycles and stuff like that. So there's a couple other points I kind of wanted to get to here. If you could do anything to, and maybe the answer is you like it the way it is, what do you think of like the NCAA seeding formula with RPI and head-to-head and all these different criteria? I know some of the complaints is that coaches should not be really doing rankings, that's not their job. Their job is to get these guys better, and there's allegedly vote trading and stuff like that going on. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a lot better than it used to be. It's not perfect. I think it's, there's media guys that or ranking guys that I think would probably do a little bit better job. I think that would be something to explore. I do think when you have enough coaches on there, it kind of balances it out a little bit, in terms of, and I think they throw out the highest and the lowest in a lot of cases. So I don't know. I mean, I don't look at that as a huge problem in our sport. Again, nothing's going to be perfect. And I think it's pretty good. And I think the products are really good. And, you don't want to mess with really good or great.
Yeah.
Perfection is the enemy of greatness, they say. So
yeah.
I don't have huge heartburn with the way it's done currently. And I'm not saying it's always, there's not times when I look at it and I'm, I disagree with it, but at the end of the day, when you put yourself in a position where you have 4 or 5 losses or whatever it is during the course of the year, and we're talking about the 8, 9, 10, 12, 15 seed, like, I mean, it's, you put yourself in that position. So it's, you gotta reap what you sow a little bit.
Well, I remember talking to you at Nationals the year Mackay won, and you were like, and you're not like this very often. You're like, I knew he was going to win the tournament. Like, he's just that good. And I think I'm correct when I say this. This is the same year that he lost to Connor Flynn from Missouri at the dual meet. And as a guy that was actively doing rankings at that time, you know how the deal goes. If you beat me and I beat Mackay, which is a dream, then you're 1 and I'm 2 and Mackay's 3. And those are handcuffs and things like that. So if Connor Flynn took losses, it negatively impacted Mackay's ranking, or seeding, or however you want to talk about it. So I do get it. And coach, all good coaches will say this too. At the end of the day, you just got to wrestle. You can't control who's in front of you. So there's one other thing that I really wanted to touch base with you, because I feel like there's 2 different philosophies. Like, there's the philosophy of coaching staff. We get everybody that wrestled here, like Iowa or like Oklahoma State, where they all wrestled in that program. I don't know if I lost. There you go. And or there's a program like yours where you have guys from different schools, different backgrounds. What do you think the pro and con is of like what you have versus the other side? Or do you, maybe it's not better or worse, it's just different?
Yeah, I think it's just different. I think continuity is important, regardless of whether it's your own guys or whether it's guys that you bring in from other programs. And if you can if you have a good staff, keeping it together, so everybody kind of knows what their role is, understanding each other's strengths and weaknesses and trying to complement each other. So, I part of me does like, I think when you bring in guys from your program, you just know them, right? You know exactly what you're getting. They're committed to, sometimes they just have that little bit extra love and passion for the school and the program because they help get it to where it is, and they were a part of it. So I definitely like that. And we have, Jared Hotz on our staff, and Ty Walls is in our RTC, is a RTC athlete with us. But, at the end of the day, it's just about getting good people and getting the right fit and getting people that care, and people that have high character, and, and then trying to keep them around. And I think once you're in a certain place where, I didn't go to Virginia Tech, but obviously I've been here a long time, and, I feel strongly about this place. And I feel like I went to school here. And I think, even with Coach Freyer and Coach Brewer, they're if they're not there yet, they're probably certainly starting to feel that way.
Yeah, I think when you guys build something, whether or not you went to school there or not, like you built it to where it is, it makes all the sense in the world. And I also think it's probably interesting, like from a coaching philosophy standpoint, like I told you, Pritz was on, and like, so you got, like those guys out there, and they all came from different places, and, how you guys maybe attack the Rubik's Cube, or how you look at it, more than one point of view might at times be really valuable. So,
for sure.
Yeah. So what do you guys have coming up here for the rest of the season? There's a couple ACC duels, and then the conference tournament and NCAAs. Are there any non-conference duels left for you?
No, we have all conference. We've got Pitt on Friday. So we're, Pitt's a dangerous team.
They are. Yeah.
They really are. They're underrated. They haven't really been, they've taken a couple losses, and they've been a little bit inconsistent, but they also, I don't know that they've been healthy the whole year. And had everybody in there, and we're going to have to wrestle well. And that's, I'm definitely, we've got to have the same kind of urgency and effort that we had against NC State, because they're good. They're good. And we don't match up great. So it's something we got to be ready for. And that's really all we're focused on right now. We'll worry about next week, but right now we're worried about Pitt.
Last Friday night, while you were wrestling NC State, I was announcing the Pitt UVA duel. So I literally just saw those guys in person, and you're right. They got 4 guys ranked in the top 6, depending on who's doing the rankings. And they're not a team you talk about that could place in the top 10 at nationals, but points wise, if they wrestle to their rankings, or maybe potentially their seeds, they could be. and you guys are a team that every year is in that top 10, top 5 conversation. It seems like you do a really good job of getting those guys to wrestle their best in March.
Hopefully, yeah, that's the goal, right? I mean, so we could talk about the whole season and everything else, but that's the most important thing, man. That's the most important thing, and I think you have to understand that. I think coaches and athletes understand that, and I think it's hard to wrestle your best the whole year long, the entire year. It just is. So if not that we don't try to, but if we're going to place emphasis, we're going to place emphasis on the end of the year. So yeah, it is. I mean, it's definitely, I think being consistent at the end of the year is important. I think we've been able to do that. So hopefully we'll continue that. And I think this year we have the potential to have a good NCAA tournament. We've got a lot of individuals I think can get on the stand. So we guys got to keep improving and getting better and attacking our weaknesses and preparing.
Well, I'll probably leave a few guys out that you guys believe can podium, but when you got a guy that's won nationals like Mackay, when you've got a guy like Latona that, beat Vito and looks like he's really settled in at 33, like it feels like that's just from the outside, like that's a much better weight class for his body and probably his enjoyment of food on a regular basis. And 157 from the outside looks like a weight that if you wrestled it 6 times, 6 different guys could win it. And your guys certainly, in the mix there. Just those 3 guys alone could score a lot of points for you. And I know you've got it. It looks like on paper, you're basically your whole team could qualify for nationals, and you get to throw that many darts at the board, you're probably going to score a lot of points.
Yeah, and I think 84, Hunter Boland's wrestling really well
yeah.
This year. And Caleb Henson at 49 is a true freshman, but, he's got some great wins, and he's, I feel what's good about Caleb is almost anybody. He's that weight's deep and it's good, but man, Caleb Henson's special. Tom Crook at 141 is another one, is a true freshman, is a really capable guy in a weight class that's wide open to a certain degree. At least, there's no real clear-cut guys in that weight class, so I like all those guys, even, and even at other weight classes, those guys are capable. They'd have to wrestle well, but we feel like we have a solid team, and a lot of guys that can score some points, and you got to get some bonus points too. That's one thing that's we're trying to emphasize here is scoring bonus points, and that's a game changer at the NCAAs. If you can get a lot of pins and majors and tech falls, that's I'd like to see some numbers on that, but it's crucial. I know the years that we've scored a lot of bonus points, we've placed really high, and the years that we haven't, it's affected our team placing.
Well, I think most people realize this to watch wrestling, but like if I'm wrestling you and my job is to not get majored or not get teched, I wrestle a lot differently than if it's at NCAAs and I'm actually just trying to win the match. I'll take more risk, which if you're better than me, opens me up for you to score more points or get pins or get techs. So, and the other thing, you see this every year, like, 20 seconds left, I'll just throw some Hail Mary lateral drop and throw myself right to my back. And you got to be the guy that's leading by so much that guy has to do that. And that's how you pick up those pinpoints a lot of times.
Yeah, I always tell our guys, if you get up by 6, you're probably going to get a major. You can get up by 6, the guy's going to do something stupid at the end most of the time, and you score a takedown and get a major, and they're huge. Those points are, 2 points for a pin. You get and this is something that I don't know. I almost feel like should be addressed a little bit. Like you get 2 bonus points for a pin in the finals, and you can also get 2 bonus points for a pin in the first round consolations. There's a big difference between those 2 pins.
Pins are not created equal.
They're not. So, and it's helped us in a lot of cases. The year we got 4th at the NCAAs, we had a lot of pins and scored a lot of points on the backside. So, it does make it exciting though. Like I think that's a really cool component to the NCAAs is keeping track of that stuff and, trying to get those bonus points and that team score. And, it really makes it exciting.
Yeah. Well, like you said earlier, you coach the rules. So everybody know the rules are the same for everybody. So that first round consi pin, like even if you have a guy that maybe is a surprise qualifier, and if he can go 1 and 2 with a pin and score 2.5 points for you,
I think you only get for 8th place. I think you only get 3 points or something, like, besides your advancement points and your, bonus points. So you get 1 pin. It's almost the same, right? I mean, maybe it's 4 points. It's not a lot for 8th place.
It's 5.5 with advancement, but it's 3 for placing and 2.5 for bonus. So you're absolutely correct.
So if you get guys that can pin, that goes a long way for you.
You could get 2 backside pins, and that's 5, and that's basically the same as a guy that took 8th and won a bunch of 1-0 decisions.
Yep.
And nobody would question who's the better wrestler, but they scored basically the same amount of points.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, listen, I think I tell people this. I don't know if I say it publicly. You were like one of the first D1 guys that were like really nice and accommodating to me all the way back when junior duels were in Oklahoma City. And, I was always pestering you about kids that you thought were good, but weren't going to make it to Division I. And so I got a lot of respect for you. More importantly, as a person, obviously what you're doing as a coach and your athletic career, that speaks for itself. Everybody would respect that. But I always just appreciate how you've treated me from probably 20 years ago, man. So I just want to publicly say thank you for that.
My pleasure, David. I appreciate you having me on. Always good catching up. And thanks for everything you do.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. We'll see you all next week.